Right. Thank you for today. We're going to look at Unit 6.2, Project Management. Project Management, Unit 6.2. Right. This is Learning Outcome 1. And Learning Outcome 1 is all about being able to analyze a business objectives and to be able to identify feasible project. So in our assignment, we'll be given a scenario and we will try to make a business case out of it and identify a project that will be feasible. And to do that, this lecture will identify 4 main assessment criteria. So Learning Outcome 1 has got 4 assessment criteria, and that has been carved as our objective for this lecture. So objective number 1, we will try and identify projects required from an appraiser of an established business objective. After that, we will try to produce a project subdivision and high-level estimates of time, resources, and cost. 1.3, we will try to evaluate a project methodology suitable for the specific project that we will identify. And lastly, we will assess the feasibility of a proposed project. Feasibility of a proposed project. Now, before we go ahead with our assessment criteria, we should be able to understand what a project is. So if you may ask yourself, what is a project? A project, by definition, is any unique process consisting of a set of coordinated and controlled activities with a start and finish date, which is undertaken to achieve an objective conforming to specific requirements, including constraint of time, cost, quality, and resources. So look at the definition. A project is a unique process consisting of a set of coordinated activities. But what makes project different from a business is that, unlike a business which is an ongoing or a going concern in accounting terms, with a project, every project has got a start date and a finish date. That means that with any project, we have a timeline to start it and finish it. So projects have got a start date and a finish date. And projects are always undertaken with specific aim that needs to be achieved. And every project has also got specific requirements to be met. For instance, if the project is a road construction, there are specific requirements for the road, such as the thickness of the asphalt on the road must be specific, how wide the road is must be specific. So at the end of the project, the project manager is supposed to hand over a project with the required specification. Again, project has got time constraints. Projects are not indefinite. They have got a time. So project must be worked according to the time. And then every project comes with cost. So there must be cost element of project. At the same time, we have the element of quality and resources. So every project must come with a certain standard or quality. And we need resources to be able to carry out any planned project. So a project is a planned set of activities. A project has got a scope. Scope meaning how big or small it is. If it's a road construction, for example, the scope could be from London to Edinburgh. Another project will have a smaller scope, which will be from London to maybe Birmingham. So when we talk about project scope, we mean how big or how small the project is. A project has time, cost, quality, and resource constraints. Every project has got time constraint, a time to start and a time to finish. Amount of money in terms of cost that will be able to finish the project. It's also constrained by quality, at the same time constrained by the resources. So have this at the back of your mind. If you are undertaking any project, look at the time frame, look at the cost element, look at the quality, and look at the resources that you will need before you decide to embark on any specific project. Right. So that is a brief definition of a project. Now, if that is a project, then what is a project management? How do we manage a project? What is project management? Project management is simply the art of organizing, leading, reporting, and completing a project through people. This means that every project will go through the cycle of designing, development, analyzing, and evaluation of the project. So it will need a project manager who will lead the organization, the leading, the reporting, and completion of the project. Right. Let's look at the next slide. So, in summary, a project is a plan undertaking. A project manager is the person who causes the project to happen. Therefore, project management is simply causing a plan undertaking to happen. That's good. So, what are some of the key points in project setup and definition? Number one, there should be project management plan. We need to create a project management plan, PMP. Number two, we should be clear of the scope of the project and the objectives of the project. Again, we should be able to establish a clear statement of what is to be done. That is the work-based structure. Work-based structure. We need to have a clear statement of what is to be done. Again, we need to establish risk to be managed. Every project comes with an element of risk. So the issue of risk that needs to be managed is also very important. Again, one key point of project setup is we should be able to establish the cost of the project, how much it's going to cost, and the duration that the project is going to last. And finally, we should be able to establish resources required to carry out the project. This means that a project is a complete set of undertaking that has got a beginning, end, and end. So have this point at the back of your mind, because if you look at assignment, we will be required to develop a project from a scenario. Right. So out of whatever scenario will be given in the assignment, you should be able to create a plan for the project, have a clear scope and objectives of what you want to achieve. You have to have a work-based plan. You have to look at possible risks that are likely to happen to the project. Look at the cost involved and the duration, and then establish resources that will be required. These are key points in project setup and definition. So have this at the back of your mind when you are doing your assignment. The next slide is about project initiation. Project initiation. If you want to start the project, that is the project initiation, what do you have to do? What do you have to do? Number one, analyze the business needs, review operations and procedures, and look at alternative projects. For example, if we want to provide or make sure that staff at a hospital are able to have a balanced diet, what do we have to do? Number one, do we allow them to go out break time to go and buy food? That's one alternative project. Number two, do we have to build staff canteen at the hospital so that staff can go there and eat? That's another alternative. Apart from that, do we outsource a catering firm to bring food to the hospital or the workplace? These are all alternative projects. So number one, analyze the business needs of the organization, review operations and procedures within the organization, and look at alternative projects that can meet the same business objectives. Apart from that, look at the cost-benefit analysis by comparing alternative projects. Which one will be more feasible? Which one will be cost-effective? In other words, what will be the cheapest cost in terms of project? So if you have three possible projects, like allowing staff to go out and break to go and buy food, building a canteen and supplying the food yourself, outsourcing the catering company to come and supply the food. If you look at these three options, alternatives, conduct what is called cost-benefit analysis and look at what is the cheapest alternative and what is going to benefit staff at the hospital. And then you think about your project subdivisions. If you choose any alternative project, we need to design what is called work breakdown structure. What is going to be done in the first phase, the second phase, the third phase, and identify time frame for each time scale. So if you have phase one of the project, phase two, phase three, phase four, phase one is going to be how many weeks or how many months or how many days? What about phase two? What about phase three? What about phase four? So you will have project subdivisions with a work breakdown structure for every phase and time scale associated with every phase of the project. Apart from that, we need to identify resources. So we need to conduct what is called project budgeting. There should be project reporting procedure and accountability so that the project will not creep or delay. Right. So if we talk about project initiation, this is what you have to take into consideration. Right. The next slide is about project methodology. There are many project methodology that can be used to undertake any project. We have three things here with a traditional approach. We have the Prince2 approach. We have the critical change approach or event change approach. We wouldn't be able to discuss all, but we will look at the traditional approach and the Prince2 approach and see which of them will be appropriate and suitable for the project that we will undertake in the assignment. Right. However, this list of approaches are not exhaustive. Right. So let's look at the next slide. Let's look at the traditional approach to project management. The traditional approach. Now, the traditional phased approach identifies a sequence of steps to be completed. In this approach, 5 developmental components of a project can be distinguished. We have got 4 stages plus the control stage, which start from the initiation of the project, planning and design of the project, you execute the project, you monitor and control, and if the things don't go the way it should go, you go back to the design, planning and design phase, come down to the execution, monitor and control. If everything is done, then you go to the closing of the project. Every project, as I said, will be initiated and it will end at the closing phase, where you have to close up the project and hand the project over to whoever sponsored the project. So this is the traditional approach to project management. Let's look at what is here. Now, a caution here must be very clear that not all projects will have every stage as demonstrated, the 5 stages, because projects can be terminated before they reach completion. So not all projects using the traditional approach will go through the key stages as described above, because not all projects will reach completion. Number 2, some projects do not follow a structured planning or monitoring process. Not all the projects will follow such a structured planning. And some projects will go through step 2, 3, and 4 multiple times. So if you look at the diagram that is in the previous slide, you've got the initiation, planning and design, you go to the execution, you come to the monitoring and control. If it's not going well, go back to the planning and design phase, come down to executing, monitoring and planning. If it's not working, go back to the planning and design. So that is the main reason why we're saying that some projects will go through step 2, 3, and 4 multiple times before it will finally go to project closure. But we have to be aware that not all projects will reach completion. Some projects are often aborted. Right, so that is the traditional approach. Let's look at the second approach, which is Prince2, which is one of the popular approaches to project management. Now, the Prince2 is a structured project management methodology. It's process-based method, which is quite effective for project management. So unlike the traditional method, Prince2 is process-based. Every process is planned. The first process is finished. You move on to the second process in that order. So it's a process-based method for effective project management, and is a de facto standard used by the UK government. And it's also widely recognized and practiced in the private sector in the UK and internationally. So it's one of the international ones, but it's basically what is used in the UK. We've got 7 principles of Prince2. Number 1 is continued business justification. At every phase, there should be justification for carrying on and continue with the project. It allows us to learn from experience, because if the first phase doesn't go on well, you learn upon it and improve on the second phase. It defines roles and responsibilities. It is managed by stages. Every phase is managed. It is managed by exception. And it is focused on products and tailored to suit the project. So Prince2 is quite unique because it can be tailored to suit every single project and every single phase. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Process of Prince2. these are directing a project, starting up a project, initiating a project, controlling a project, managing a stage boundary, managing product delivery, and closing a project. Right. The diagram we're going to show in the next slide demonstrate the 7 processes that we're talking about in Prince2. And each rectangle also lists the product or output of the process. So let's look at the diagram we're talking about. So you could see that I start with the starting up the project, initiating the project, managing a stage boundary, controlling the stage, managing product delivery, and closing a project. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the 7 processes that I show you in the previous slide. This one: directing, starting up a project, initiating, controlling, managing a state boundary, managing product delivery, and closing a project, as demonstrated in this diagram. Let's go to the next slide. Now, for every project, we need to assess feasibility. So, in order to conduct or start any project, feasibility studies must be undertaken, and the feasibility study will help us judge whether the project is doable or not, whether there are obstacles and risks that are likely to come up. All these issues will come up during the feasibility study. So it's kind of a pilot study in the form of research, but in project is feasibility study. That is the basis that we can judge if the project will work out or not. So during the feasibility studies, we have what is called risk management, where we'll be able to identify any possible risk that will come up if we are doing the actual project. So identify risk during the feasibility studies. We can look at the impact that the project will have. If it's a dam that we want to construct, if you construct a feasibility study, you can be able to identify the environmental impact of the dam when it is finished. So impact analysis. And then we'll be able to, once we're able to identify the risk, we can put in place risk management planning activities in place, so that when we come on to do the actual project, such risk will be averted. And then we'll be able to review cost-benefit analysis and risk equations for the project. So once you do the feasibility studies, you will be able to come out with the cost-benefit analysis for the project and to see if our alternative project will be better than what we intend doing. And then we can consider other issues impacting on the project. Example, issues of globalization, advantages and disadvantages of cross-country and culture of the project. We can factor all those things in when we carry out what is called feasibility study. So feasibility study is very, very, very important in project management. The next slide, we'll look at issues and risks that may impede a project. One of them that we'll look at is scope risk factor. Now, scope risk factor is the top rated risk factor of scope risk for any project that is to be undertaken. Right. The scope risk of the project may not be based on the sound business case, and the impact of the business requirement may be ignored for the sake of interest in technology. What this means is that in terms of scope risk factors, we need to ask ourselves, is this project we are going to undertake based on the sound business case? Or just because it's an interesting technology that we want to do? So is the business actually based on a sound business case? With the example I gave concerning building the canteen to cater for the nutritional needs of staff, outsourcing a catering company to come and provide the food at lunchtime, or allowing staff on break time to go outside to go and buy food. These are all different types of projects, right? You look at different alternatives and then make a business case out of it. If this project is more efficient, if we should go ahead and do it or not. Again, additional factors, as according to B. John K. 2007, include objectives that are often unclear and misunderstood. Some of the scope risk factors are sometimes the business objectives happen to be unclear or misunderstood. This poses a big risk. Before you go in for the project, you have to make sure that the objectives are very clear and everything is understood. One of the scope risk factors is also what is called creep. Sometimes scope tend to creep. Requirements tend to creep. This means that in terms of scope, how big or how small the scope of the business should be keep on changing. Oh, let's make the thickness of the road 10 centimeters. And then, oh, let's make it 5 centimeters. You keep on changing, and that is going to be a risk that is going to delay the project. What about the requirement of the project? It also tends to creep. Again, one of the scope risk factors is changing needs, which are introduced when the project is already underway. This is sometimes very annoying, and it draws the project back. You start the project, you have your own specification, you know what you are doing. Then, in the course of the project, there are changes that comes in. For instance, if you are building a house, which is 2 stories, and then along the line, you are asked to make it 4 stories. It means that it's going to cause the project to creep, because the foundations of the building was meant for 2 stories. So along the line, if you are asked to change it into 4 stories, it means that we have to change the very foundation of the building. So those are all scope risk factors. So before you go into the project, be very sure of the scope, how big or small. Make sure it is based, the scope that you've chosen is based on a sound business case. You can make a very sound business case for what you have decided to do. And then you have to make sure that the objectives are very clear and understood. Make sure that the requirements are very clear. How big or small is going to be very, very clear, so that you don't change your mind and introduce in new things once the project is underway. Those are all risk factors that often impede a project. Right. The next slide is an example of what I term project subdivisions and high-level estimate of time, resources, and cost. So this is an example of project subdivisions, how we can divide a project into different phases. Phase 1 will be the discussion of the type of the project. Phase 2 will be conducting of the feasibility studies for the project. Phase 3 could be the approval team to approve the project. It's another phase. Phase The next phase, phase 4, will be employing and training staff on the contract. Phase 5 will be the construction phase of the project itself. And after construction, the next phase will be the closing down of the project. It's another phase. And then the last phase will be handing over the project. So project can have different subdivisions. Every single project, whether it's a construction project, whether it's a research project, whatever project, be it engineering or construction, will need to have subdivisions so that you will understand what needs to be done at every phase of the project, Now, let's look at the next slide. The concept of cost-benefit analysis of alternative project is very, very, very important. If you are doing every project, look at the cost-benefit analysis and look at alternative projects and then judge to see which will be the best for your business. Again, we come into the business case again. Let me use my old example of a hospital trying to cater for the needs of the staff, the nutritional needs of staff at lunchtime. There are 3 projects. 1, build a canteen if you don't have one, and make sure the right food is served for the staff. So that's one project you think about, building the whole canteen, the cost involved, the land, money involved, the time involved in building the canteen. That is one project. The second project will mean that, we are not going to build any canteen. What we're going to do is outsource a catering company to come into my organization or the hospital in lunchtime and come and sell the food to our staff. And we will give them the type of food that they should bring in. The other option, leave the staff alone, break time, let them cross the road and go and buy any food that they want to buy themselves and come and eat. So these are 3 alternatives projects that I've given. What you need to do is to conduct what is called cost-benefit analysis, looking out at every single project and look at what will benefit, what will make the best business case for your organization. So, for example, if you decide that, we want to build our own canteen, but the canteen is going to be very expensive in terms of construction. We haven't got money. Or if you've got money, the money can be used to do something else. So what we think in terms of cost-benefit analysis, it would be quite cheaper if we outsource the catering company who prepare their own food, drive in their van, come and deliver the food, and I start by them. They finish eating, they take everything away, go and wash it. So if we feel that in terms of cost-benefit analysis, it's going to be cheaper for the organization to go that route, then of course we go down. That's called cost-benefit analysis. So cost-benefit analysis, also known as benefit cost analysis, is a mathematical approach to compare the cost and the expected benefit of 2 or more projects. Simply put, a cost-benefit analysis is made to identify how well or how poorly a project will be concluded. Right. Now, cost-benefit analysis is a logical way of making decisions based upon the probable outcome of various courses of actions. So here you are looking at different alternatives of different projects that will be able to solve the same problem. A cost-benefit analysis can be divided into 5 steps. Specify the possible options for an option, and this must be mutually exclusive, that it might be impossible to choose more than one. So when you are doing cost-benefit analysis, if you have 4 alternative projects, you will have to choose one, which will make a good business case, which will be cost-effective, and which will save the organization money. Right. Now, we're going to look at project time scales. Project time scales. For every project, we should be able to identify time scales, or what is called milestones. Project milestones. Right, so this is the example that I've shown here. Milestones or deliverable and target date. Number one, we have project planning and kickoff. Let's say 04/04/2013 is when we want to start it. We want to analyze it. 6/4/2013. And then the design of the project to go into 6/2/2014. We developed the project. 7/7/2014. We have the pilot test. 9/7/2014. Project release and closeout could be 9 on the 18th of 9/2014. So if it's a 5-year project, it can go from 2013 up to 2019. Right. So every project, every deliverable, every phase must come up with what? A target date. This is very, 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 very important, because for all projects, cost and time is important. Money is voted for the project, so that you make sure that you are able to do the project and finish on time. So when we talk of identifying project time scale and milestone, it's all about looking at different phases of the project and apportioning time. And this is going to guide you, because initially at the beginning of the lecture I said that project is not a business. Businesses are what is termed in accounting terms a going concern. You begin a business and you expect it to run indefinitely. You will die off and then your family will inherit the business. So a business is a going concern. It never stops. But a project has got a specific timeline. It starts and then finished. You close out the project, hand over the project to whoever sponsored the project. So a project time scale or milestone is very, very important. We should be able to design a project time scale so that we will know when we will start our project and when we will finish our project. I think we'll be able to do justice to the project initiation. So if you look at the first phase, we've been able to talk about identifying project requirement, producing subdivisions and high-level estimate. We've talked about methodology that is suitable, and assess the feasibility of a project, a proposed project. I spoke on the traditional method and then the Prince2. Right. So read through the slide, go on Moodle, look at the assignment brief, and look at the first part of it, and try and see if you can start the first bit of the assignment. And when we meet next week, we'll discuss it further, and I'll try and email you individually a copy of or a template of an assignment that will serve as a guide for you to be able to complete the task quickly. Next week, we'll go on learning outcome 2. Learning outcome 2. Right. Thank you so much. Most of you were not able to join, but this is recorded, so you can play it and listen to it and start the assignment, which is lodged on Moodle. And if you have any question that you want to ask, when we meet next week, there will be a quick recap of this. And if you have any question, then you can ask. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. Bye.